Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys palettes in my collection that I would be super sad if they disappeared from my collection. I am a big eyeshadow junkie, so eyeshadow palettes is just anytime I buy anything new, it's always going to be an eyeshadow palette. So I wanted to go through my collection and see what palettes I have that I would definitely be super sad if they disappeared from my collection again. So if you want to know what those palettes are, definitely continue watching. Also, if you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe. I am doing Vlogmas right now, so I am uploading 12 videos in a row. I guess I already failed because I missed an upload, but yeah, that was the point of doing 12 videos in a row. So if you want to keep seeing more from me, definitely subscribe so you don't miss out. And let's just go ahead and jump right in. So I'm talking like it disappeared and I can't even pick it up anymore. Some of these are limited edition that you already cannot find, but some of them, a lot of them are palettes that you can still pick up. So if they disappeared, I could rebuy them. But this is like palettes if I could not repurchase and they disappeared from my collection, I would be super, super upset. So the first palette I have to share with you guys is the palette I'm actually wearing. This is newer to my collection and I've used it a few times, but just by using it a few times and also the color story, I definitely would be sad if this disappeared from my collection. It's the Melt Cosmetics Amor y Mariposas palette. This is the packaging. I think I can go without the actual heart on the packaging, but I really like the floral, the butterflies, the hummingbirds. I think it's super cute. I guess everything else stands out more to me than the actual heart on here. It's fine, I guess, but I really like the meaning of the palette as well. But inside here is the color story. I think it's beautiful. I love that they still incorporated all the butterflies in here as well. This is a wearable palette to me. Even though it's color, it's super wearable to me. I like wearing color, so I really like it. Definitely would be sad if it disappeared again from my collection, and I really like the formula. It's really, really pigmented. So next up would be the Huda Beauty Medium Nude palette. This is like my perfect color story for everyday use. Like, again, I am one to use like burgundies and rich toned browns for everyday use. So I would be upset and sad if this disappeared because this is my everyday color story. Like, I really enjoy this palette. The formula is super nice. These are my colors. I really love this palette, and this would definitely be another one that would be like sad for me. This is pretty wearable in my opinion for myself. Like, again, this is me in a palette. Next up is another Melt palette. This was limited edition and you cannot find it. So this, I'm holding it very close to myself and I will not be letting it go. But if it disappeared, I'd be very upset. My Melt MUERTE palette, a lot of people regret not picking this up and I'm super happy I did. I kind of debated on getting rid of the Viva palette because I feel like I have those shades in a lot of my palettes, and this one's just definitely more unique to my collection. I love the packaging and I just really love this palette, so I will definitely not get rid of it, but I'd be sad. I keep repeating myself, I'd be sad. I'm gonna be sad if any of these palettes disappeared, but how beautiful is this color story? I love the reds, I love the greens in here, I love all those grungy shades in here. I think it's such a fun palette. I wish they would bring this back for you guys so everybody can have it. But again, if it disappeared, I would be so upset. Like, this is such a great color story, super dark and perfect for the fall and winter season. I just think it's a really beautiful color story, and I think Melt Cosmetics did a great job with this palette, and just the collection in general, it was very, very good. So I'm happy I have it. So again, I'd be sad if I lost it. Next up, what else? This is newer to my collection. This is a newer brand too. To me, this is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Surge palette. Again, I picked a lot of these palettes because the color stories are beautiful. The formula is actually really nice as well, but look at this color story. Like, you get a line of pastels, normal colors, deeper shades, shimmers, brights. Like, this is a really cool palette, super unique. Love the color story. I really think like you can use this any time of the season because, again, you got those pastels, you got the brights, you got the darks, you got the shimmers, like every single color, most of the rainbow is in here. I do find that it was pretty easy to build up and apply, but still, just color story wise, I would be very upset if I lost it. Another palette, I believe this one's limited edition. This is the Beauty Bay Age of Opulence palette. I debated whether to put both this and the Wilderness, but I feel like Wilderness isn't as unique of a color story as this palette is. So here is this one here. I just love all the jewel tone shades in here. I really like the shimmers in here as well. I do find that Beauty Bay, the palettes I've tried, I also had Book of Magic, and the shimmers in that one weren't great. I know a lot of people like this formula because the shimmers are kind of like Super Shock Shadows by ColourPop. And in my Book of Magic palette, my shimmers weren't that way. They were pretty dry. But this one here, the shimmers are pretty reflective, and I do enjoy the color story in this one as well. So I just think the color story is beautiful. Like, I would use every single color. There are blues. This one's, I would still use. There's blues like periwinkle blue that I'm kind of intimidated by, that I don't really use, but I feel like every single shade in here I would use and be okay with. So this one I definitely had to add to this video. One for sure, like, I do have two Pat McGrath palettes, but this one here is like super unique and super beautiful. This one is the Pat McGrath HUETOPIAN Dream palette. It's so pretty. I do keep the outer packaging because I just feel like it's art, and how can you get rid of such pretty packaging? Mine still has a plastic on it as well, but here's this color story. Every single look I created when I used this palette, I thought it was so pretty. This shimmer right here is really pretty and reflective, and it's a duochromy kind of color. It's like gold, but is it purple? Is it pink? I don't know, but it's beautiful. Mattes are really nice, and the shimmers are super nice. Those special shades are really good as well. I kind of was thinking at first that these palettes were kind of like overhyped, because I do have the number 5 in this packaging, the Bronze Seduction. I don't know, I wasn't like super impressed with the mattes in that palette, but this one and also Midnight Sun, the last two I purchased, the mattes were really good and pigmented and really, really nice. Look how pretty like these shades down here are. I'm like, squirrel. I was talking about something. Yeah, the mattes in my Bronze Seduction, I don't know, maybe I need to play with it again, but I felt like the mattes in that palette were more on the drier side compared to this one and Midnight Sun. But I definitely wanted to talk about this palette here because it's definitely very unique to my collection. Another palette that I would be super sad if it disappeared from my collection would be another Pat McGrath palette. This is the holiday one. I was not going to pick this up at all, but I had a gift card, I believe, so I figured, hey, like, it's going to pay for most of the palette, so you might as well just pick it up. And yeah, I did, and I'm super glad I did. The formula in this is really nice and pretty comparable to this palette as well. The mattes, you don't get as many. It's more of a shimmer heavy palette, but the shimmers are really nice and buttery. The mattes are super nice as well. It's just been a really beautiful palette, and I've really enjoyed every single time I've created a look with this palette. I've loved my look. So for sure, this would be a top. If I like lost any others, I'm sure I could be okay with losing one of these other ones that I already spoke about, but this one for sure cannot leave my collection because I would be super upset. Another palette that I definitely needed to mention in this video is this one right here. This is the ABH Primrose palette. I was on the fence on picking up this palette because I'm not a really big fan of ABH formula. I just feel like their formula is a little too powdery for my liking, but I still went ahead and picked this up because I really enjoy this color story as well. Like, I feel like this is me as well. Is it pretty similar to the Huda Beauty one? Probably. I do see some similarities in some of the shades that are in here. This is very pigmented, and a little bit goes a long way. It does kind of have that powdery formula a little bit, but I feel like it's not as bad as the other palettes she has. The color story is beautiful. The shimmers are stunning. This one right here, look, I'm barely touching it. Look how much pigment I have in my finger. Like, there is so much pigment in this shadow. Like, any look I created with this palette, I really loved. So I just really love the color story. This is also a Mariella palette. Like, this is me in a palette. I really love it. And I will be super upset if I couldn't pick this up again. This is a really good palette that launched recently. So if you were, this one was on sale too not too long ago. I think like even 30 to 40% off. It was a super good deal. Get your hands on this if you're eyeing it. Another palette that I would be upset if it disappeared would be my It's Freakin' Bats palette by Beauty Bean and Shroud Cosmetics. This is my first Shroud Cosmetics palette, and I was super happy to see the color story, and it was in collab with Beauty Bean. I really love her look. She's super creative, and I really like this color story as well. The pigment's super nice. The mattes are nice and buttery. The shimmers are creamy and buttery as well. Kind of like a little bit out of the box shades, but I like that. I like that the color story is different from anything else that I have. I don't reach for it as often because of that, because the shades are a little more out there for everyday use, but overall I really enjoy this palette. Another one, this is a like all shimmer palette. It's beautiful, and I was super impressed when I used this. This is my Adept Cosmetics Plain Jane palette. This palette's actually really expensive, but I need it in my life. I cannot ever get rid of this, and if it disappeared, I would find a dupe for this. There are dupes out there. I don't know if the formula is pretty comparable or not, but this is beautiful. Again, it's an all shimmer palette, and it's kind of like duochrome-y. They kind of shift a little bit as well. Super reflective and very beautiful. I'm super happy to have this in my collection. I just think it's such a beautiful palette, and I would definitely be interested in trying more from Adept Cosmetics. I think they're a little on the pricier side, but just trying it for the first time with this palette alone, it's worth it because it's really nice. I have two more palettes to share with you guys. This one is Natasha Denona, the Gold Remix, I could say, because it's not like the actual gold palette. I kind of adjusted the shades in here. Mine's like gold palette with cranberry. It's a gold cranberry palette. So these shades, these and this one is from the cranberry like 5-pan palette, and the rest are from the gold palette. I kind of adjusted mine because I felt like some of the shades were pretty similar. There was like a couple of this color. There was like a dark bronze shimmer, another gold shimmer, and I don't remember what else, but I like the cranberry palette and I like the gold palette, so I kind of just made my own. The formula on Natasha Denona is super good. Like, the shimmers are nice, the mattes are nice. At one point, I kind of thought Natasha Denona palettes were a little better than Pat McGrath, but lately I feel like they're pretty comparable. And I honestly also feel like this ABH palette is pretty comparable in, like, the shimmers are pretty comparable to the Pat McGrath and the Natasha Denona. This palette here, I feel like it's pretty close to these other high-end palettes. Again, it's my gold remix, so I really like this palette a lot. So if I had to pick any of my Natasha Denona palettes, it'd definitely be this one. I also did actually bring out the bronze palette. I would have mentioned it in this video, but I do find that a lot of the looks that I create with this palette are pretty similar, so that's why I didn't, like, I don't know. I feel like I get pretty much the same 5 looks with this palette, so I definitely just went ahead and had to mention the gold remix in this video. And then lastly, this one is limited edition. You can't even find it anymore unless you find it on Poshmark or Mercari, but it's the Lunar Beauty Moonspell palette. I was lucky enough to pick this up and still have it in my collection. I know he came out with a new Moonspell palette. It looked pretty, but it doesn't compare to the original, you know? So this is what it looks like. And I like that it has some wearable shades in here, but you also get the greens and the purples. I feel like purple and green are more like a wearable color than like blue. I don't know. Purples just seem like an everyday kind of shade for me. It has some nudes and it has some greens in there, but they're not like scary greens or anything like that. This one might look super bright on camera, but it's more like muted on the eyes. Maybe this one here isn't, but like everything else is pretty wearable, like for everyday use. It's a really good formula. I also really like Lunar Beauty's formula. It's really, really nice. This one for sure would be another one that I would be very upset if it disappeared from my collection. So those are all the palettes in my if my palettes disappeared, which palettes I would be upset they left my collection video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know which palettes you have that you'd be upset if they disappeared from your collection. It's kind of sad to think about it. You know, anything can happen, knock on wood, but this is just a just kidding kind of video, okay? Like, I don't really want it to happen. I don't want nobody breaking in my house trying to steal these palettes, because I would be very upset. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please also subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!